Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Stephanie Bree, and today I'm talking about, well, actually I'm showing off my entire D&D book collection, and I'm talking about what books I have, why I have them, and what books I plan on collecting. So I'm going to go in order from oldest to newest. Well, edition wise, not necessarily publication wise. So this is the oldest book in my collection. It's also the oldest edition I have. This is Dungeons and Dragons Basic 1981 set. So TSR, Fantasy Adventure Game Basic Rulebook. I do not have the box set. I only have this one book. But why do I have this particular booklet instead of the box set? Well, money, obviously. But why basic? Well, I want to have every edition of Dungeons and Dragons, so eventually that will include original D&D as well as the 1978 basic and the 1983 basic and the rules cyclopedia. So that's everything I want as far as basic goes. So I do want BECME and I do want BX. This is book 1 in BX. This is the B. The X is expert. I do not have the expert book at this point in time, but it's in pretty good shape. And this was a fun read. I've actually read all of these books. I've read the PDFs of every core rule book of every edition of D&D, as well as the retro clones, including Osric and a whole bunch of others. Yes, even Pathfinder. So I never played basic D&D. I've seen some Let's Plays or actual plays or whatever they're called on YouTube, and it's interesting. It's a little bit different than what I'm used to, but not that different because I used to play first edition AD&D and I started off with second edition AD&D, so it's really not that foreign to me because it uses Thaco, which I'm not proficient in but familiar with, and it's got a lot of the same races and classes and tropes and treasures and monsters that you would expect. So this is your basic Dungeons and Dragons. I do not currently own any AD&D first edition books. I have one AD&D second edition book. This is the Player's Handbook. This is the first printing, not a literal first printing, but this is the what the first printing looked like. When I was a kid, I actually had the second printing, not second printing, but the second release, the second version, we'll say. I don't know exactly which specific printing. I can check. Let's go ahead and take a look real quick. It should say right here, second edition. Where's the copyright stuff? Printed in USA, distributed by Random House, blah blah blah. Alright, I'm not seeing it on here. It should say right here. It just says 1989 TSR Inc. All rights reserved. Printed in the USA. Anyways, I started with second edition AD&D, but I had the second version of this book. So it's a little different. This version is a little different. Now, the only reason why I have this book instead of the one I grew up with is because I found this at a bookstore, at a comic book shop, and it was like $5, and I jumped at it because you cannot get this book for $5 on eBay. This is a very expensive book. So, yeah. I guess it doesn't say on here which printing it is. That's weird. They usually do. It must be a first printing then. It doesn't say, but I don't know. Anyways, so what I want, I didn't talk about AD&D first edition, but because I skipped over it because I don't have any AD&D first edition books. But what I want from AD&D first edition is every book that was published under first edition, except for the Fiend Folio. I'll get into why I don't want the Fiend Folio in another video. I'm iffy on Oriental Adventures, but I had Oriental Adventures a long time ago, so I think I want it just to complete the collection. But second edition, I want the 3 core. Well, no, not the 3 core rulebooks. Excuse me. I want the Player's Handbook and the DMG, and then I want some of the player supplements. And that's pretty much it. I'll use the first edition Monster Manual with second edition AD&D because they're 90% compatible. There's like some, there's some what do you call it? Level creep that shows up in second edition that's not in first edition, but you can If you're a good dungeon master, you can account for that. Anyways, let's go on to third edition. So this is the first book in my third edition, 3.5 edition collection. This is The Complete Warrior, a player's guide to combat for all classes. This is a hardback book. And I got this one because I do want the supplements from third edition and 3.5 edition. And this is the only supplement I own, but it's in excellent, excellent condition. And the only other 3.5 edition book I have is the Core Rulebook 1 Player's Handbook. I will not be buying 3.0 core rulebooks, Player's Handbook, DMG, or Monster Manual, but I will be buying books, supplements, and other books from 3.0 because they're more or less compatible with 3.5. Next up is 4th edition. This is the only book I have in 4th edition. It is the First Player's Handbook, Arcane, Divine, and Martial Heroes. So this is like the literal core rule book. The only reason why I own this is because I want to have one of each of the 3 basic core rule books. So Player's Handbook 1, Monster Manual 1, DMG 1, and that's it. I don't want anything else from 4th edition. Not any modules or supplements or nothing else. So let's go ahead and get into 5th edition. We're going to start with my newest book. I just got this today, or actually yesterday, but I'm still awake, so it counts as today. This is Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. So a couple of reasons why I wanted this book. Well, one, I want most, but not all, books from 5th edition. So I don't necessarily want all of the modules, but I do want all of the core books and the supplements. We'll talk about modules separate. But I also like this book because in real life I am a witch, and this whole book is witchy stuff. So it's fantastic. I've already flipped through it. I'm going to do a separate video just reviewing that book by itself. I'm going to do that with each and every one of these books down the road. This is Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. This is another 5th edition book. This is a campaign setting. This is the only campaign setting of any edition I owned. Previously, the only other campaign setting I ever owned was Dark Sun from 2nd edition. I had the box set, the whole box set. And I threw it away. I literally threw it in a dumpster. That's a long story I'm not going to tell today, but I was justified because I was basically getting kicked out of my apartment and I was homeless for about a week. And I had no choice. I had to empty my apartment in a hurry. So here's D&D Core Rulebook 1, 5th edition Player's Handbook. This is my go-to Player's Handbook. I play 5th edition more than anything. Next up is the only Monster Manual I currently own. This is 5th edition Monster Manual. So this is the only Monster Manual I own, but it's not the only one I want. It's not even the only Monster Folio I want from 5th edition. And of course, the DMG, the Dungeon Master's Guide, the big one. This is the only Dungeon Master's Guide I own currently, and it's my go-to Dungeon Master's Guide. It's my go-to reference for when I want to learn about D&D or do campaign stuff or even just writing fiction. I reference this book a lot. So that's a look at my current DVD collection, D&D collection. This is going to grow over time, and I have other books that are on the way, as in either I've ordered or they're in my shopping cart, and I'm going to order them as soon as I have the money. They're already in my shopping cart, ready to go. So I have that. So basically I want all the core rulebooks from each edition except for 3.0, and that's only because 3.0 and 3.5 are basically the same thing, and I prefer 3.5 over 3.0 anyways. So I'm not going to buy the 3.0. I'm most likely not going to buy the 3.0 books, but you never know. I'm not going to say never. So modules, I only want to buy a small handful, and I have a list. I'm not going to read off. I have a list of AD&D first edition and BX modules that I want to buy. No BECME modules, no 2nd edition modules, no 3rd edition modules, no 4th edition modules, and a handful of 5th edition modules that I want to own. As far as supplements go, too many to list, but I want like most of the supplements, but not all of the supplements. I want most of the rules supplements. I don't necessarily want all the class supplements or race supplements. But I also do want the campaign settings. I want not all of them, but I want a good, I'm not going to say the majority of them, but a good chunk of them. I do want a lot. There's a lot of different campaign settings I do want to get across all different editions. So eventually I'll have somewhere in the ballpark of about 85 to 100 books, give or take. That's my ultimate goal. I currently have 10, 5 5th edition, 5 non 5th edition. And the way I buy books is I'll buy a 5th edition book and then I'll buy a non 5th edition book. So that's how I'm growing my collection, because there's more 5th edition books than there is any other edition. Except maybe 3rd edition. I think 3rd edition has them beat, but I'm being selective on my 3rd edition stuff. But alright, that's all I got for you. Stay cool.